This is the Italian Citizenship Podcast, hosted by Marco Permunian and Rafael Di Furia.
Hello there, and welcome back to another edition of the Italian Citizenship Podcast, presented by Italiancitizenshipassistance.com. I, of course, am Rafael Di Furia, and we are back at it again with Italian attorney Marco Permunian. How are you doing today?
Good, how are you?
I am doing great, thank you. And in this episode, we wanted to talk quickly about the Codice Fiscale for Italy, but talk about it more in reference to 1948 cases, as well as applying for Italian citizenship by descent directly in Italy. Marco, I think before we jump into the episode and why it may be worthwhile for someone to actually have their Codice Fiscale for these processes, or even if it is required. Can you just give us a quick overview, just even though we've done episodes on it in the past, can you give us a quick overview of what the Codice Fiscale is itself?
A Codice Fiscale is an alphanumeric number that is assigned to Italian citizens at birth, but also it can be assigned to foreign individuals that need to do transactions in Italy or that need it for other purposes in relation to having to do something in Italy, like entering into a rental agreement or opening a bank account. But we can talk about what's the purpose is. But regarding what it is, it's an alphanumeric number that identifies you as a person, and it's somewhat similar to a U.S. Social Security number. Now, having a fiscal code, an Italian fiscal code, does not mean that you will be liable for Italian taxes. So you can obtain a fiscal code in Italy even if you are not a tax resident, meaning a resident of Italy from a tax standpoint. So you can have a tax code without having to pay taxes in Italy. It is issued by the Italian Revenue Agency, in Italian Agenzia delle Entrate, and you can obtain it through one of their local offices that are present in the Italian territory, or through an Italian consulate if you reside abroad. Like I said a moment ago, having an Italian tax code can be necessary regardless of whether you are an Italian citizen. If you have to perform transactions in Italy, if you have to work with the public administration, for example, it's absolutely necessary. If you have to go through a process with the Italian public administration to obtain a tax code, but also if you have to enter into a rental agreement, if you have to pay taxes in Italy, of course, but also if you have to get a salary in Italy, so be employed by an Italian company, you will need a tax code if you are on their payroll.
Well, thank you so much, Marco, for going into that overview of what the Italian fiscal code is, the Codice Fiscale. Of course, if you're interested in more information about what the Codice Fiscale is, I would highly recommend checking out episode 7 of the Italian Real Estate Podcast, where we go a little bit more into it. But Marco, talking about the 1948 cases, before we get into how the Codice Fiscale and the 1948 cases can be intertwined, would you mind also giving us a mini overview of the 1948 cases so we can have a better understanding of the topic at hand?
Absolutely. So when we talk about 1948 cases, we're talking about court cases. So citizenship cases or claims that are being filed through an Italian court. So there are some people that don't qualify for Italian citizenship by descent, so they cannot apply for citizenship through an Italian consulate because they have a female ancestor in their Italian lineage who gave birth to their child before January 1st of 1948, which is when the Italian Constitution came into effect. So people who have a female in their Italian line who gave birth to her child before 1948, they cannot claim citizenship through that female or through an ascendant of that female, and therefore they cannot qualify for Italian citizenship, and consequently they cannot apply for citizenship through a consulate, but they have the ability to file a case through the Italian courts and claim citizenship that way, thanks to a 2009 Supreme Court's decision, which basically stated that citizenship have indeed the ability to transfer their citizenship to their children, even if their children were born prior to 1948. So thanks to that legal precedent that was again set by the Italian Supreme Court, people have now the ability to file these citizenship cases, people that otherwise would not qualify for Italian citizenship by descent. And these cases are successful. So it's a very, very good path to get Italian citizenship.
Well, thank you again, Marco, for giving us an overview of the 1948 cases. And of course, if you're interested in more information about the 1948 cases, be sure to check out our previous episodes of the Italian Citizenship Podcast on that topic. But Marco, let's get into how these two intertwine. Why is it that a person with a 1948 case that they need to actually go forward with, why would they have an interest in the Italian Codice Fiscale? What would be the connection between those two?
Applying for a tax code is highly advisable for people who have a 1948 case, but also, like you just mentioned, for people who are interested in applying for citizenship through an Italian municipality. It is not necessary at this time to have a Codice Fiscale for people who are going through the Italian consulate, so people who are applying for citizenship via an Italian consulate in their country. But why is it advisable for people who have a 1948 case to obtain a tax code? Because some court, and I'm talking about at this time isolated events, and more specifically some judges within those courts have started to request that petitioners are in possession of a certificate that indicates their fiscal code. So an official certificate released by either the consulate or the Agenzia delle Entrate that indicates their tax code. The law does require that people who file their claim in an Italian court have an Italian tax code, but so far for people who were not residing in Italy, many courts have never requested that people are in possession of a tax code. And once again, those courts that have deemed these to be necessary are just a couple so far. So out of all of the courts in the country that we deal with, just a couple have specifically requested that petitioners have a tax code before they file the case. So they have not allowed people to file their case without a tax code. And of course, for individuals that are in need to file their cases in those courts, in those regional courts, we are advising that they get the Codice Fiscale before we're able to do the filing, because otherwise the filing might not be accepted. On the other hand, individuals who need to file their case in one of those courts that so far have not requested petitioners to be in possession of a tax code, they can still file their case. And so far, we're not getting any objections by the majority of the Italian courts. So it's absolutely safe to file without an Italian officially assigned tax code, but it's advisable to still get it while the process is going forward. So in other words, we're filing cases for our clients because there are no objections from the judges in these courts, but we're still advising clients to simultaneously start the process of obtaining a tax code, which can be a lengthy process, just in case, just to be on the safe side, so that if the court requires it at some point in the process, we have it.
Very interesting, Marco. And I'm just curious because we did see an update in the last few years about how it was shifting, how all of the court cases were shifting from the Court of Rome to more regional courts. Is this something that is new since this shift from the Roman court to the regional courts, or has this always even been the case in Rome?
Fiscal codes were never requested by the Court of Rome, but at the same time, this was not a change that was implemented with the law that basically stated that all citizenship cases are to be filed in the local regional courts. So it's not that that law also specified the need for tax code. What happened, as I just mentioned, is that some judges in some isolated cases, in some courts, in some regional courts, specifically off the top of my head, I can think of the Court of Palermo, they've started to request that petitioners have a tax code. So like I mentioned, for those individuals who have to file in those specific courts where we know already that tax codes are required, we are advising clients to get it beforehand. But for the other people that are going to go through the other courts in the other parts of the country, it's safe to file without a tax code, but it's advisable to get it simultaneously while the process goes forward.
Fascinating. And Marco, this also makes me curious about another thing. The citizenship by descent petitions that are presented at the comune, the municipalities of these, the city halls of these towns. Is it the same situation where you have to have the Codice Fiscale, or how does that work when you're going in that direction rather than a 1948 case?
You need a fiscal code when you are applying for the Italian citizenship by descent through an Italian municipality. First of all, because you are dealing with the public administration, with the local public administration, meaning town hall. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, when you're dealing with an Italian public administration located in Italy, you do need, as a general rule, a tax code, but also for other reasons, because, for example, you need to enter into a rental agreement if you don't own a property to establish a residency with the purpose of applying for citizenship. But even if you have a property, if you purchase a property, you needed a Codice Fiscale in order to complete that purchase. So either way, if you have a rental property or a property that you own, you need a tax code. So what happens in those situations is that the person who's applying for citizenship arrives in Italy, and as a first step, an application for a fiscal code is filed through the local Agenzia delle Entrate office, which is the Italian revenue agency. And in that case, the obtainment of a tax code is fairly easy and quick because the person is in Italy. So when the person is in Italy and the purpose is to establish residency, very often the Italian revenue agency assigns an official Codice Fiscale to the person who needs to apply for Italian citizenship. We have encountered some situations where the revenue agency objected that the person needed to obtain a tax code through the Italian consulate prior to moving to Italy. So there are some difficulties associated at times with getting a tax code either through the consulate or through the Agenzia delle Entrate directly in Italy, because it could happen that both of them, they basically state that the other one is supposed to release the Codice Fiscale, so you might encounter some difficulties if you're going through the process by yourself. But definitely at some point before you relocate to Italy or right after your relocation, you will have to obtain a tax code if you intend to apply for citizenship through an Italian municipality.
Very interesting. And Marco, would you be able to give us also a little bit of an overview of how to actually go about getting the Italian fiscal code? What steps are required? Do you need documents? Do you need anything to bring with you? Can you do it online? Do you have to do it in person? How does that all work?
If you reside abroad, like I mentioned before, you will have to deal with the Italian consulate. Make sure that you identify the consulate that has jurisdiction over the area where you reside. For example, if you live in the state of New York or Connecticut, you will have to deal with the consulate in New York City. So every consulate in the US has a very specific jurisdiction on a number of US states. Once you have identified the consulate that you need to deal with, you can send them a request to obtain a fiscal code. You can send such requests through the mail or by email, depending on what the consulate wants. So make sure that you read the guidelines or that you ask them specifically how to obtain a fiscal code through them. If you send the application through the mail, it is likely that the consulate will want you to include a prepaid and pre-stamped envelope or pre-stamped envelope that they can use to send you back the certificate, including your tax code. Some consulates also require that you include a letter indicating the purpose for you to obtain the tax code. So make sure, again, that you read the guidelines, because some consulates will require that you fill out this letter or form that is available on their website. And keep in mind that applying for a tax code is completely free of charge.
And Marco, while we're on the topic of actually applying for the Codice Fiscale, what is it that actually ends up on the form? What kind of information are they looking for? Is it detailed information? Do you need a criminal background check? Or is it just basic, simple information that they're really looking for at the end of the day?
They are looking for basic information on the form itself. So they want your name, your last name, your residency address, and they want to know if you're applying for the tax code for yourself or for another individual. And they also require that you attach proof of residency as well as your ID. Also, the form that is available on the website of the consulate is pretty much the same form that you would use if you were to apply for the tax code directly in Italy. And there are instructions published on the website of the Agenzia delle Entrate on how to fill out the tax code application form. And as you will see from the instructions, not all of the sections on the form need to be filled out. So make sure that you understand which sections you need to fill out and which sections you need to leave blank.
Well, Marco, thank you so much for going through all of this information and for sharing with us the importance of having the Codice Fiscale and why it may be necessary or important to have this particular tax code. But Marco, if anybody is needing to get their Codice Fiscale or go through the 1948 process or get their Italian citizenship by descent otherwise, how can they get in contact with you and your team?
People can contact us through our website, Italiancitizenshipassistance.com, or give us a call. Our numbers on the website.
Absolutely fantastic. And of course, if you are interested in more episodes like this, talking about Italian citizenship, how to get it, and all of the processes and all of the related topics and updates in between, be sure that you're subscribed to the YouTube channel as well as the audio-only podcast. But of course, if you're subscribed to the YouTube channel, that means you're also automatically subscribed to the Italian Real Estate Podcast, where Marco and I get into some of the details about purchasing property, renting property, as well as where to do so in Italy. And also, if you're interested in discussions about life abroad and living abroad as a dual citizen expat, be sure to come over to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Rafael Di Furia, or you can search for Not Your Average Globetrotter on YouTube or your favorite podcasting platform of choice. Of course, I'm Rafael Di Furia, and we have been here again with Italian attorney Marco Permunian from Italiancitizenshipassistance.com. Stay safe and healthy out there, and we will see you all next time. Later.
Thank you.